about something both simple and profound: silence. In a world overflowing with noise, chatter, and constant exchange, silence is often overlooked, underestimated, even feared. And yet, silence carries a power far beyond what words can convey. It is a presence, a space, a force that touches the soul in ways language often cannot. We live in a culture that celebrates speaking, expressing, performing. We measure understanding by how fluently we can articulate our thoughts, how persuasively we can argue, how loudly we can be heard. And yet, despite all this noise, many hearts remain untouched, many minds remain closed. Words, as powerful as they are, can only go so far. They are bridges, yes, but bridges with limits. Silence, in contrast, is not limited. It is the vast landscape on which meaning can emerge naturally, without being forced. Think, for a moment, of a moment when words failed you. Perhaps in grief, or awe, or love. You wanted to speak, yet no words came. And in that silence, you felt something profound, something unspoken, something deeper than language. That, my friend, is the power of silence. It is not absence, it is presence in its purest form. Silence allows us to observe without judgment. It creates a space for reflection, for listening, for understanding. In the midst of silence, we hear truths that words often obscure. The sound of a friend's breathing, the rhythm of our own heartbeat, the subtle shifts of thought and emotion, all become more vivid when we are not filling the space with noise. Silence awakens awareness, and awareness is the soil from which wisdom grows. There is a story I wish to share with you, a small parable that illustrates this truth. In a village high in the mountains, there lived an elder known for her insight. People came from far and wide to ask her questions, to seek advice, to understand their lives. And yet, when they arrived, she often said nothing. She simply sat with them, eyes calm, presence steady, and waited. Many grew impatient, thinking she had nothing to offer. But after hours of silence, something remarkable occurred. The visitors began to speak to themselves, to uncover answers buried within their own hearts. The elder's silence was not emptiness, it was a mirror, reflecting the depth of their own thoughts. In that silence, they found clarity that no lecture, no argument, no advice could have given them. Silence, my friend, is a teacher. It asks us to slow down, to pause, to notice what is often invisible. It is in silence that we hear our own intuition, the quiet voice of conscience, the subtle stirrings of emotion. Words can guide, suggest, inspire, but they can also distract, distort, or overwhelm. Silence, in contrast, creates a space where truth can arise naturally, unforced, and deeply felt. Consider the relationships in your life. How often do we speak to be heard, rather than to listen? How often do we fill pauses with chatter, fearing the discomfort of quiet? And yet, it is precisely in those pauses, in the stillness between words, that understanding deepens. When we allow silence to exist, we give others, and ourselves, the opportunity to truly be present. We allow meaning to emerge organically, rather than imposing it through speech. There is another remarkable quality of silence: it reveals what is essential. Words are many, fleeting, and often cluttered with nuance, opinion, or ego. Silence strips away the superfluous. In silence, the core of a message, a feeling, a truth, becomes clear. Think of a loved one sitting quietly beside you in grief or joy. No words are necessary, and yet everything is communicated. The shared presence, the quiet attention, speaks volumes more than language ever could. Silence also holds a subtle power over the mind. It allows space for integration, for healing, for reflection. Consider the moments after a difficult conversation or an intense emotion. Rushing to speak, to explain, to justify, often prolongs confusion or conflict. But sitting in silence, observing, breathing, letting the mind settle, this is where transformation occurs. The mind and heart find balance, insight surfaces, and the echoes of emotion can be understood rather than acted upon impulsively. I once met a man named Jonas, a teacher who had spent decades in classrooms filled with the chatter of children. He noticed that the most profound learning did not always come when he was speaking or instructing. It came in moments of quiet, when students were allowed to think, to reflect, to encounter ideas in their own time. He would sit silently, observing, guiding without interference. And in that stillness, understanding blossomed. His greatest lessons were not words he spoke, but spaces he created for others to discover their own truths. Silence, therefore, is not merely absence of speech, it is presence in its most potent form. It is the fertile ground upon which meaning grows, the mirror in which thoughts and feelings reveal themselves, the companion that accompanies us into depth and understanding. It is in silence that wisdom whispers, not shouts, and that hearts listen with clarity. There is also a poetic dimension to silence. Poets, mystics, and philosophers throughout history have recognized that what is unsaid often carries the deepest resonance. A pause, a breath, a still moment, these communicate more profoundly than 1,000 words. They evoke emotion, reflection, and connection in a way that language alone cannot. And this is why meditation, contemplation, and mindful presence are so transformative. They cultivate a relationship with silence, revealing its power and depth. Let us not forget that silence is also an expression of courage. To remain silent in the face of provocation, to listen when others rush to speak, to resist the urge to fill every space with words, this requires patience, strength, and presence. Silence can disarm conflict, calm tension, and create room for empathy. It is a force that moves subtly, but with great effectiveness, because it speaks to the mind and soul simultaneously. My friend, take a moment to observe the spaces around you, the pauses in conversation, the quiet hours of the day. Notice how much they carry, how much they reveal, how much they allow you to perceive the world and yourself more clearly. Words are bridges, yes, but silence is the landscape upon which bridges are built. Without it, understanding falters. With it, truth emerges naturally, patiently, profoundly. So I leave you with this reflection: do not fear silence. Embrace it. Allow it to settle in your life, in your mind, and in your relationships. Notice the depth it offers, the clarity it brings, the resonance that words alone cannot provide. In silence, we discover presence, understanding, compassion, and wisdom. In silence, we hear not only the world, but ourselves. And in this hearing, we touch something eternal. There is another subtle dimension to silence that is often overlooked: its capacity to reveal connection without dependency. Words can sometimes create distance, clutter, or misinterpretation. Silence, however, allows a subtle communion, an unspoken understanding between hearts. Consider two friends sitting together, sharing a quiet evening. No conversation is needed, yet a deep bond is felt. Their souls recognize each other, not through the noise of speech, but through presence. In such moments, silence is more powerful than words because it communicates trust, empathy, and shared understanding without forcing articulation. Silence also teaches patience. In a world obsessed with immediacy, we often seek instant responses, instant understanding, instant solutions. And yet, many truths take time to unfold. By practicing silence, by learning to wait without fear, we cultivate an inner rhythm that honors the natural pace of thought, emotion, and life itself. Silence is the teacher of timing, reminding us that not everything must be rushed, not everything must be explained. I wish to tell you a story, a quiet story that captures this power. There was a young musician named Alina, who played the violin in a small town. She was gifted, but restless, constantly seeking validation through applause and praise. One evening, after a performance that received little notice, she wandered into the hills alone. She played, not for anyone, not for recognition, but simply to feel the music move through her. As the notes floated into the empty night, she realized something remarkable. The silence around her amplified the music, revealed nuances she had never heard before, and connected her to the world in a way that applause never could. In that silence, she felt unity, understanding, and presence more profoundly than words or accolades had ever offered. Silence, my friend, is not empty. It is a living space, a mirror, a conduit for understanding, for empathy, for insight. In silence, we encounter ourselves more fully, perceive others more clearly, and allow life to speak without our interference. It is patience, presence, and perception all at once. There is also a courage in silence that is often overlooked. It takes bravery to remain quiet when provoked, to listen when others demand attention, to resist filling the void with noise simply because it is expected. Such courage does not command, it influences. It shapes environments subtly, yet profoundly. By choosing silence, we assert our presence without aggression, we honor our own inner space, and we allow truth to emerge without force. Many great thinkers, poets, and mystics have recognized this power. They understood that what is left unsaid often carries more weight than speech. A pause, a reflective moment, a quiet gesture, all can communicate more than pages of words. Silence is a language of its own, and those who learn to speak it understand its profound reach. And perhaps most importantly, silence allows for reconciliation, within ourselves and with others. Words can wound, mislead, or inflame. Silence allows time for reflection, for understanding, for forgiveness. It is the cradle in which insight grows, and in which hearts can align without the distortions of hurried expression. My dear friend, consider the spaces of your life, the quiet corners, the pauses between conversations, the moments when you hesitate before speaking. Notice how much these spaces carry. They are not empty, they are alive. They are the medium in which understanding, compassion, and wisdom emerge. They are the invisible threads connecting us to ourselves and to one another in ways words alone cannot achieve. So let us not fear silence. Let us welcome it as a companion, a guide, and a teacher. Let us use it to listen more deeply, to observe more carefully, to reflect more profoundly. In silence, we find the power that words cannot always provide: presence, clarity, understanding, and a connection to the world and to ourselves that transcends speech. And as we end this reflection, remember this: silence is never empty. It is never weak. It is patient, observant, and powerful. In its stillness, we find truth. In its calm, we find insight. In its quiet, we discover the profound presence of life itself. Words may guide, instruct, and inspire, but silence speaks directly to the soul, and its wisdom endures far beyond the fleeting sound of any voice.